Back in 1895, Cornelius Vanderbilt II poured $7 million into constructing a seasonal retreat. Not his main dwelling or a full-time spot, just a getaway for 8 weeks to dodge New York's scorching summers. 70 rooms decked out in Italian marble and gold accents. 2 years of labor tapping the top artisans across the country. A fortress-like estate meant to resist fire, decay, and time's wear. And it succeeded. As other Vanderbilt estates in New York got torn down, as wealth crumbled and kin dispersed, the Breakers endures, impeccable and untouched, drawing close to 500,000 visitors annually. This tale explores how one estate survived them all, the dynasty behind it, the opulent times that birthed it, and all the competing grand homes that aim to rival its splendor. It's a look at what unfolds when you craft something not merely for dazzle, but for eternity. Before diving in, share your thoughts in the comments. Ever toured the Breakers? What draws you to these Gilded Age estates most? If you're into these explorations of U.S. history, give a thumbs up and subscribe. Your backing fuels these accounts. All right, let's head to Newport, Rhode Island during the summer of 1895, when America's grandest seaside cottage threw open its gates. That $7 million seaside escape. Picture dropping over $4 billion in modern dollars on a holiday pad. Welcome to the Breakers. The Vanderbilts barely paused before committing. Newport, Rhode Island, in the 1890s went beyond a simple seaside village. It served as the summer haven for the nation's wealthiest clans, fleeing the oppressive heat from New York, Boston, and Philadelphia. But, quote one, misses the mark. They arrived to vie, to flaunt, to demonstrate their deeper pockets, sharper style, and flashier abodes outshining the rest. The Vanderbilts already owned a place there, a timber-built estate dubbed the Breakers after the pounding surf on the cliffs beneath. Cozy and adequate, yet in 1892, flames razed it completely. Utter ruin. And as Cornelius Vanderbilt II surveyed the ruins of his vacation haven, he resolved on a move that would shape Newport's legacy. He'd reconstruct, but now impervious to blaze. This version would eclipse every other Newport pile. The Vanderbilt legacy would be etched indelibly in rock. He brought on Richard Morris Hunt, the designer behind the Statue of Liberty's pedestal, who'd fashioned lavish residences for the Astors and fellow Vanderbilts. Hunt stood as America's top architect, the go-to when budgets were boundless and flawlessness the sole goal. Go for Italian Renaissance vibes, Cornelius instructed. Render it majestic, flame-resistant, and complete within 2 years. 2 years. Typical estates demanded 4, 5, even 6. At 52, Cornelius helmed the nation's biggest rail network and couldn't afford delays. 2 years. That was the timeline. Hunt envisioned a manor drawing from 16th century Genoese and Tuscan villas. No mere replica, but a tailored evolution. U.S. proportions fused with Italian poise. The frame would be steel reinforced, a bold step for home building. Outside, Indiana limestone and brick ensured no inferno could touch it. Inside, marble, stucco, and exotic timbers, arranged to halt any fire's path. 70 chambers, not matching Biltmore's 250, but each in the Breakers crafted for stunning effect. Excellence trumped volume, with every element flawless. The build site turned into a bustling hub. At its height, more than 2,000 laborers toiled, Italian stone carvers imported for the fine details, specialists in ornate plasterwork, gilding experts handling gold, premium marbles, and rare hardwoods hauled from global ports. Indiana limestone, Italian and African marble, Algerian alabaster. The primary structure sprawls over 1 acre indoors, 1 acre capped by a single roofline. The grand hall climbs 50 feet, a vast chamber crafted to dwarf guests, instilling awe and humility. Surfaces clad in prized French conque stone, an enormous hearth where a person could step in. Overhead, a vaulted ceiling mimicking a heavenscape, complete with wandering clouds. Each space carried its motif, function, and intent. The music chamber gleamed with platinum overlay and exquisite French boiseries salvaged from a razed Paris chateau. Platinum over gold, scarcer, costlier, more striking. The billiards area boasted Cipollino marble walls in green and white hues. The morning drawing room, Alice Vanderbilt's spot for entertaining, featured walls sheathed in tooled leather. Authentic Renaissance artworks from European troves adorned the interiors. Yet what sets the breakers apart is its seasonal blueprint, no intent for constant occupancy. All those chambers, intricacies, and awe-inspiring areas existed solely for 8 to 10 weeks of summertime. Nothing more. The other months? The place stood vacant with furnishings shrouded, under dust covers with windows sealed tight. Just a handful of staff, around 10 folks at most, kept up the sprawling 70-room estate that sat empty most of the time. The extravagance, the outright excess, that was the whole idea. No one but the Vanderbilts could splurge on erecting such a grand structure and hardly set foot in it. Expenses piled up as the building advanced. Cornelius had figured on perhaps $3 or $4 million, but the total climbed to $7 million in 1895 dollars. Factor in inflation, and it's equivalent to $250 million or higher in modern currency, all for a seasonal retreat. His relatives believed he'd gone off the deep end. Sure, his brothers and sisters, each with their share of the Vanderbilt wealth, were putting up lavish homes too. Yet this went beyond even their lavish habits. $7 million for a mere 8 weeks annually. Cornelius shrugged it off. It wasn't simply a getaway spot. It symbolized heritage, endurance. The family wealth stemmed from railways, grimy, factory-like, fresh-made riches that elite old New York circles scorned. The Vanderbilts didn't rank as true upper crust. They were mere merchants who'd struck it big. The breakers would shift that view. This wasn't a flashy flaunt of recent wealth. It embodied refinement, sophistication, design rivaling Europe's elite. The Vanderbilt surname etched in stone over the doorway, proclaiming their entry into America's top social echelon. Work surged ahead. Hunt drove the laborers without mercy. Cornelius dropped by often, inspecting advancements, insisting on flawlessness, tweaking specifics. His spouse, Alice, collaborated with Hunt on the furnishings, picking out materials, signing off on pallets, arranging pieces. Come summer, this would be her territory, the venue for gatherings, suppers, affairs that would solidify the Vanderbilt standing. By the summer of 1895, the breakers stood finished. Exactly 2 years as planned, $7 million is the true tally, 70 chambers of sheer opulence primed for the family. Cornelius paused in the grand hallway, gazing at the 50-foot vaulted ceiling, permitting a brief wave of pride. He'd pulled it off. He'd forged an enduring marvel, resistant to flames, ruin, or the passage of time. The breakers would endure, while America did. He nailed that part, at least. Yet he couldn't foresee how scant his own years would be to savor his creation, or how fast tragedy would unravel his world beyond any fortune's reach. Cornelius Vanderbilt II, the sibling who claimed the dynasty. Born in 1843, Cornelius Vanderbilt II never picked his path. Fate selected it for him. His granddad, Cornelius Commodore Vanderbilt, amassed a shipping and rail conglomerate via cutthroat rivalry and shrewd tactics. Upon the Commodore's passing in 1877, he bequeathed America's biggest personal estate, roughly $100 million. Adjusted today, that's bigger than numerous nations' output. But vast wealth demands stewardship, and the Commodore rejected equal divisions among heirs. He favored inheritance by the firstborn, hand the core to one strong successor who would safeguard and expand it. Thus, most flowed to Cornelius's dad, William Henry Vanderbilt. William more than doubled it in only 8 years, from $100 million to $200 million, though the pressure proved fatal. He perished in 1885 at age 64, keeling over in his Fifth Avenue residence after decades of relentless oversight over railways, dealings, and corporate clashes. The load then fell to Cornelius II, the oldest boy. Not the playful Vanderbilt, nor the one wedding into old-world titles, hosting epic bashes or sparking tabloid frenzy. Cornelius was the dutiful sort, the grave one, who grasped that sustaining riches meant endless watchfulness, tough calls, endless shifts, and crushing tension. His junior siblings reveled in the bounty. Willie K. Vanderbilt raised Marble House in Newport and devoted days to yacht pursuits. Frederick erected estates and amassed paintings. They'd received fortunes ample for lives of dazzling ease, no labor required. Cornelius got the realm, The duties, the New York Central Railroad plus scores of others, hordes of staff, non-stop rulings on pricing, paths, rivals, labor unrest, rules. It devoured his existence like a career, and he embraced it fully. As his kin frolicked, Cornelius toiled. He manned his office 6 days weekly. He joined director sessions, scrutinized ledgers, shaped moves impacting fortunes and livelihoods by the thousands, reputed as equitable yet firm. Not as harsh as his forebear, but no pushover. Commerce remained commerce. He wed Alice Claypool Gwynn in 1867 at 24 years old. Alice hailed from Cincinnati's refined set, dignified, refined, suitable. They raised 7 kids who reached maturity. A classic Gilded Age household in their Fifth Avenue pile at 57th Street, upholding Vanderbilt prestige. But Cornelius sensed the he faced unrelenting pressure from every angle. It went beyond handling his personal affairs. He was safeguarding the entire family heritage. Each corporate choice, public outing, and expenditure faced intense examination. The Vanderbilt reputation carried weight, and it fell to him to defend it, elevate it, and keep it linked to achievement. That's precisely why the breakers held such importance. It wasn't mere extravagance. It represented a calculated outlay to bolster the clan's standing in elite circles. Newport served as the summer haven for New York's upper crust. The Astors had their estate. The Belmonts had theirs. The Vanderbilts had to match them to show their wealth was just as stable and their elegance equally impeccable. Thus, $7 million for a seasonal residence appeared outrageous, yet to Cornelius it was essential. This was commerce, albeit a subtler form than overseeing railroads. The issue lay in Cornelius's inability to disentangle work from leisure. Even in Newport, during those cherished 8 weeks of respite, he remained on duty. Telegraph lines linked the breakers to New York. Couriers brought updates every day. Mornings found him in his office tackling rail matters, followed by a break for midday meals, then back to the grind. Alice organized afternoon teas and evening banquets while Cornelius sifted through letters. His brothers and sisters saw the toll it took. He was deteriorating quickly. By age 50, he appeared 60. His locks turned silver prematurely. Creases etched deeply into his features. He battled migraines, sleepless nights, stomach troubles, all tied to mounting tension. Physicians urged him to ease up, hand off tasks, and truly unwind. He refused, or simply couldn't. The vast enterprise demanded oversight, and only he could handle it right. In September 1896, scarcely more than a year following the breakers' completion, Cornelius sat at his desk in the Fifth Avenue residence. It was a routine start, pile of mail, choices about ventures ahead. Suddenly, numbness gripped the right side of his frame. He attempted to rise and toppled over. The cerebral attack was severe. At 54, he pulled through, but just scarcely. It rendered him partly immobile, his words garbled, his thoughts fuzzy. He grasped events unfolding nearby, yet couldn't participate fully, couldn't labor, couldn't steer the domain. He was sidelined from the role that had shaped his maturity. Alice relocated him to the breakers, hoping the ocean breeze would aid healing. For 2 years, Cornelius endured in the grand edifice he'd erected, pushed in a wheelchair amid its splendor, witnessing it all but deriving no joy, there in body yet distant in spirit. The twist was heartbreaking. He'd poured $7 million into crafting the ideal coastal escape. Now he was confined within, scarcely aware, incapable of savoring a thing. The Grand Hall's 50-foot vaulted ceiling loomed over him, unheeded. The platinum-decorated music chamber held no significance. Every meticulously chosen element he'd fixated on went unappreciated by a fading intellect. In September 1899, 3 years post-incident, Cornelius passed away. He was 56. He'd possessed the breakers for 4 years, 4 summers, perhaps 32 weeks altogether, in a dwelling that had run $7 million. Alice, now 50, found herself alone, overseeing a colossal estate and an even grander property she'd never desired. Cornelius had constructed the breakers for enduring impact, for kin, for lasting presence. Now Alice confronted what came next. The straightforward path might have been selling it, minimizing damage, pocketing the proceeds, and relocating to something modest. But the Vanderbilt insignia adorned the gateway. This structure embodied more than personal ease. It stood for the clan's societal rank, their assertion of endurance, their inheritance. So Alice resolved on a course that would shape her remaining days. She would retain the breakers regardless of expense or difficulty. She would uphold this opulent retreat, occupy it each summer, affirm the Vanderbilt's place among Newport's elite. That choice would challenge her across 4 decades, for sustaining a 70-room palace proved costly, ruthlessly so. And the Vanderbilt wealth, impressive though it was, held no guarantees of eternity. The evening the original breakers went up in flames, November 25, 1892. Thanksgiving had recently ended. Newport stood almost deserted. The seasonal residents had departed for their urban homes long before. The Vanderbilt's timber-framed cottage loomed silent and unlit, tended by a minimal crew. Near 6 a.m., an acrid scent of burning caught notice. When the origin was located, fire was already surging through the framework. Aged timber, brittle like tinder, the blaze advanced swifter than intervention allowed. Soon, swaths of the building were consumed. The staff escaped, snatching portable treasures, a handful of artworks, bits of silverware, anything of worth they could carry. The rest perished in the inferno. The town's firefighters arrived, but their tools suited modest blazes, not palatial ones. They doused with streams, yet it resembled halting a torrent with a sprinkler. The conflagration thundered onward, devouring years of built-up dreadful flames, consumed the wooden structure, along with its textiles and interior decor. By midday, the entire residence had vanished. Only the sturdy stone base, a few surviving chimneys, and heaps of smoldering ashes lingered in the chilly November breeze. In New York, Cornelius got word via telegram. His cherished summer retreat, the spot where his loved ones had escaped for holidays, where his kids had matured through lazy summer days, where echoes of joy filled each corner, had been obliterated. A complete catastrophe. The monetary setback proved minor. Coverage from insurance shielded him, and as a man of considerable wealth, parting with a seasonal dwelling posed no real danger to his assets. Yet the intrusion cut deep. Arson-like devastation had breached his domain, wrecked his possession, and stripped away a vital piece of his world. Cornelius Vanderbilt II never took defeats lightly. He journeyed to Newport to inspect the wreckage. He trudged amid the debris, with soot grating beneath his footsteps. He examined the remnants. Scant traces remained, scorched timbers, fractured stacks. The acrid scent of charred wood persisted in the atmosphere, even after several weeks. His offspring's playthings lay ruined. Cherished family portraits had evaporated. Decades of gathered treasures dwindled to oblivion. Amid the desolation, Cornelius resolved his path forward. He vowed to reconstruct. However, the fresh iteration of the breakers would diverge sharply. It demanded utter immunity to flames, no timber elements, no susceptible substances. He envisioned a fortress impervious to infernos, enduring against the ravages of eras, destined to persist through generations. Funds posed no barrier. The sole limiter was the calendar. Newport's social season kicked off toward the end of June. Launching work at once might, just possibly, yield a renovated abode within 2 years. An audacious schedule, likely unattainable. Yet Cornelius rejected notions of impossibility. He called upon Richard Morris Hunt in Newport. At 65, Hunt stood as America's premier designer, largely stepped back from the field, selecting only endeavors that sparked his passion. The pair surveyed the cinders side by side. There, Cornelius unveiled his ambition. "Ik had het, quote, 3." Hunt likely deemed Cornelius deranged, crafting and erecting such a grand edifice in that span, incorporating innovative blaze-proof methods and sourcing rugged elements that required extraction, transport, and expert placement by specialists unavailable domestically, ones who'd have to cross from Europe, seemed absurd. Still, Hunt felt compelled. This trial matched his stature, and the Vanderbilts compensated generously. Exceptionally so. He took on the project. Investigators never pinpointed the blaze's origin. Perhaps faulty electrics, a flue malfunction, or negligent tobacco use. The specifics held little weight. The true insight endured. Timber ignites, customs ignite, history ignites. For lasting endurance, one must employ substances flames cannot devour. That 1892 inferno reshaped Newport's building heritage indelibly. Prior to the breaker's demise, the area's lavish homes were chiefly timber-framed, ornate Victorian retreats no doubt, yet rooted in flammable frameworks. Once Cornelius erected his blaze-defying stone and steel marvel, rivals emulated the approach. Marble House, Rosecliff, the Elms, every subsequent iconic Newport chateau adopted such resilient builds. In essence, that blaze served as the ultimate boon to Cornelius's enduring mark. The prior timber version would have decayed, fallen to wrecking crews, faded into obscurity. The reborn, impregnable sanctuary promised to eclipse all. But realization demanded unprecedented ingenuity and artistry in U.S. home building. Erect it unburnable, erect it swiftly. Richard Morris Hunt confronted a dilemma. In truth, multiple dilemmas vied for focus. First, his patron insisted on a regal estate finished in 2 years. Standard timelines for such a scale ran 4 to 6 years at least. Hunt needed to slash that by over 50%. Second, blaze-proof steel skeletons represented frontier innovation, validated in office towers but seldom in residences. Each aspect required bespoke design. Third, the exquisite detailing Cornelius craved, Renaissance-inspired stonework, ornate carvings, detailed moldings, called for overseas talent to be scouted, relocated across the ocean, and overseen amid the build. Fourth, this transcended mere shelter. It embodied the Vanderbilt proclamation to elite circles. Flawlessness was non-negotiable. Zero leeway, zero concessions. Excellence amid an unfeasible rush. Hunt commenced with the core framework. Steel beams formed the unyielding backbone, a lattice of ironwork bearing all loads. Such techniques were rare in 1893. Luxurious abodes typically relied on lumber supports. But metal defied combustion, metal defied decay. The skeleton arrived in prefabricated units via train, pieced together on location like an enormous enigma. The outer shell featured Indiana limestone atop brickwork. Both elements utterly resistant to fire, affixed layered with multiple coats for optimal resistance to flames. Yet limestone wasn't merely applied haphazardly to the structure. Every piece required exact shaping and seamless integration, forming a durable facade that appeared timeless, as if it had endured for ages. Hunt crafted the residence in the manner of 16th-century Italian palazzos, drawing particular influence from estates in Genoa and Turin. It wasn't a direct replica of any one edifice, but rather a blend, incorporating the finest aspects of Italian Renaissance design and modifying them to suit American proportions and functions. The outcome possessed a distinctly Italian flair, yet embodied a singularly American drive. The primary building spanned approximately 125,000 square feet, exceeding the size of a football field, encompassing 4 levels when including the servants' quarters and underground areas. The facade boasted enormous pillars, intricate moldings, and sculpted accents that imparted substantial presence and majesty to the edifice. This design wasn't intended to harmonize with its surroundings. It was crafted to command attention. Hunt collaborated with a group of experts. Structural engineers determined the support needs for the iron framework. Quarry experts procured the limestone from Indiana sites. Artisans from Italy were hired to execute the ornamental sculpting. All aspects demanded upfront planning, as errors weren't affordable. Work commenced in the spring of 1893. The location transformed into an industrial hub. Rock masons labored in makeshift workshops, mold makers readied casts, woodworkers assembled templates for poured concrete. During the height of activity, more than 2,000 individuals toiled at the site. These weren't mere workers, they included highly trained artisans, many imported from Europe expressly for this endeavor. The Grand Hall represented Hunt's crowning achievement. Inside this space, soaring 50 feet tall with surfaces of polished French limestone, it aimed to overwhelm guests upon arrival. A colossal hearth anchored one wall, spacious enough for a person to step within, adorned with the Vanderbilt coat of arms. Overhead, a mural evoked the sense of an expansive heavens. The atmosphere evoked a sacred nave, transcendent even, rendering entrance diminutive while the mansion seemed everlasting. For the inner chambers, Hunt partnered with various authorities. The music parlor was fashioned by French artisan Jules Allard, who acquired authentic 18th-century boiserie panels from a raised Paris residence and embedded them into the paneling. These ornate gold-leafed wooden sections, exemplars of 1700s artistry, found new life in a late 19th-century U.S. manor. Yet Hunt innovated beyond that. The surfaces were also clad in platinum overlay, eschewing gold. Platinum proved scarcer, costlier, and more striking. The gaming lounge featured Cipollino marble from Italy. This verdant and ivory-veined material, extracted since antiquity, arrived in vast panels transported over the ocean, trimmed to exact specifications and set by Italian masons versed in ecclesiastical and noble projects. The overhead was ornate stucco finished with gold leaf. Custom luminaires were bespoke throughout. Across the estate, Hunt confronted a recurring issue: how to render flame-resistant building graceful instead of utilitarian. Iron supports were sheathed in gypsum or veiled by stone. Ventilation channels were tucked into partitions. Wiring for electricity, a pioneering innovation, was routed via protective tubing rather than left visible. The outcome was a dwelling that appeared classical yet incorporated avant-garde engineering. The schedule was unforgiving. Hunt drove the builders relentlessly. Setbacks incurred fines. Errors required rushed corrections. Supplies needed to arrive on schedule. Premature delivery risked spoilage in warehouses. Tardiness halted progress. It resembled strategic maneuvering, orchestrating myriad professions, vast crews, and deliveries from across 3 continents. Cornelius made frequent inspections, reviewing advancements and insisting on reports. He possessed deep knowledge of building. He'd constructed rail depots, spans, manufacturing plants. He recognized excellence and detected skimping, and he rejected any compromises. This estate would achieve flawlessness or nothing. Alice teamed with Hunt on the furnishings, choosing textiles, endorsing palettes, arranging pieces. She brought sophisticated discernment and firm views. The Breakers would serve as her summer retreat, a venue for hosting Newport's elite. No element was trivial. By the summer of 1895, remarkably, the project concluded precisely 2 years as stipulated. The total expense had surged to $7 million, almost twice the projected sum. But it stood ready. 70 chambers of indestructible, seismic secure, enduring splendor. Hunt joined Cornelius on the veranda, gazing at their accomplishment. The designer felt drained. The undertaking had devoured 2 years, tested him more than prior commissions. Yet he beamed with accomplishment. This was his pinnacle. He'd overcome daunting obstacles, adhered to an unattainable timetable, forged a structure destined for longevity. Cornelius felt content. This exemplified Vanderbilt wealth's potential. This formed his enduring mark, a fortress impervious to flames. What nothing could tear down, what the passage of time couldn't erode, what would echo the Vanderbilt legacy through the ages. Little did either man realize that Hunt had only 3 years remaining, that Cornelius would be struck by a stroke in the coming year, that their grand designs for immortality would face trials right away. Yet on that balmy afternoon in 1895, as they gazed upon the Breakers for the initial occasion, they had achieved the remarkable. They had constructed the nation's finest fortress against flames, and in contrast to Linwood Hall, unlike countless other opulent estates from the Gilded Age, this residence would endure. All of it. The spaces that left high society breathless. Music. Step inside the Breakers' main doorway, and what greets you first isn't merely a chamber. It's a bold declaration. The Grand Hall soars 50 feet overhead, 50 feet, equivalent to the height of a 5-story structure, all in a mere foyer. Your gaze ascends beyond the French Caen limestone surfaces, beyond the sculpted ornaments and towering pillars, to the muraled overhead that mimics wispy clouds floating over a vast expanse. The impact hits hard. You sense your own tininess, your unimportance, the intended awe settling in. Precisely the intention. The hearth by itself could accommodate a dozen folks upright within its expanse. etched with the Vanderbilt acorn and oak leaf emblem, motifs picked by Cornelius's forebear to signify resilience and perseverance. The shelf above is enormous, demanding dedicated reinforcement, iron girders concealed behind the partitions solely to bear its weight. Yet the grand hall served merely as the prelude. Each subsequent area was crafted to outshine the previous, building a mounting wave of extravagance that rendered guests speechless. Veer left from the grand hall into the music room. Here, Alice orchestrated her premier gatherings, where Newport's elite convened for recitals and chats. The space came from the vision of French craftsman Jules Allard, and he spared no effort. Surfaces gleam with platinum overlay, not mere gold. Platinum, scarcer, costlier, utterly Vanderbilt. But the true gems lie in the boiseries, no imitations here. Authentic 18th century sculpted and gilded timber sections rescued from raised French estates. Craftsmen in the 1700s devoted months to these detailed patterns, and now they grace an American seaside retreat. The overhead is paneled and adorned with intricate motifs. The seating, entirely period pieces, is arranged for ideal dialogue and show watching. A bespoke Steinway concert grand rests in one corner. No ordinary model, this was among their elite, chosen for the chamber's sound qualities. Alice arranged soirees with top performers summoned from New York and Boston to entertain her circle. Invites to these affairs served as badges of status in Newport. Exclusion from the Vanderbilt's music room meant irrelevance. Traverse the grand hall to the opposite flank for the billiard room. This realm belonged to the gentlemen. Ladies rarely entered during the Gilded Age. Post-dinner, the men would withdraw to puff cigars, sip cognac, shoot pool, and talk dealings, secluded from the women. But Cornelius forbade tobacco in his billiard room. Ponder that. A space tailored for masculine leisure and indulgence, yet the master prohibited lighting up. His fire phobia ran deep, no surprise after his initial home went up in flames. Thus, the billiard room transformed into the globe's most lavish smoke-free retreat. Surfaces clad in Cipollino marble from Italy, a verdant and ivory marbled rock. The overhead shimmers with gold leaf atop ornate stucco. The pool table, immense and tailor-made, rests flawlessly balanced at the core, but zero smokes, no stogies, no tobacco pouches. His visitors likely seethed in frustration. Still, it was Cornelius's domain. His edicts reigned. The morning room stood as Alice's personal haven, more compact and personal than the showy areas. Walls sheathed in stamped and tinted hide, an age-old method known as cuir doré. The overhead boasts detailed stucco in gentle hues. Here Alice conferred with intimate companions over tea, managed her letters, and plotted the season's festivities. Sunlight pours via lofty panes framing the grounds and sea afar. Each furnishing was hand-picked for this spot, every artwork aligned with care. Alice possessed impeccable discernment. Detractors might label the Vanderbilts nouveau riche, but none faulted her interiors. She delved into continental aesthetics, sought counsel from masters, fashioned environments blending ease and sophistication. Ascend the majestic stairway, and indeed, several exist as staff required discreet paths unseen by company, and you arrive at the private sleeping quarters, not for display, so they're relatively understated. Relatively. These remain suites with stone hearths, ornate trims, attached lavatories equipped with imported continental hardware. Cornelius and Alice maintained distinct sleeping chambers linked by private parlors were a common feature among affluent pairs of that time. Solitude was prized, and having individual sleeping quarters allowed each partner to follow their own rest routine without bothering the other. Cornelius's chamber was fairly plain compared to the opulence expected of the elite. Fancy embellishments held no appeal for him. In contrast, Alice's space boasted more elaborate touches, featuring graceful furniture and gentle hues. The visitor suites varied greatly, each styled in distinct themes to offer repeat visitors fresh experiences. One could evoke French Rococo, the next Italian Renaissance, and another an English countryside manor. Alice aimed for her guests to sense they were exploring various European estates without ever departing Newport. Yet the true innovations lay not in the lavish chambers, but in the practical areas. Down in the cellar sat a 75-foot swimming pool, clad in intricate tiles. Keep in mind, this was 1895. Enclosed pools remained scarce even in communal facilities, virtually non-existent in personal residences. The water came heated, an extravagant touch. Adjacent stood a squash court for workouts, plus storage for baggage and athletic gear, alongside spacious staff lodgings. The kitchen spanned vast dimensions. It needed to in order to handle feasts for grand soirees, equipped with numerous stoves, huge cooking apparatuses, prep zones, and dedicated chambers for assorted provisions. Their cooling setup represented the latest in tech. Many households still relied on ice chests. The Vanderbilts enjoyed automated chilling. The helps' quarters filled the topmost level, compact yet sufficient for chambermaids, valets, chefs, and upkeep crew. Included were a dining space for staff, lounging spots, and even a modest hall for leisure activities. The Vanderbilts hired roughly 30 household workers full-time to upkeep the breakers, swelling to 40 or 50 in peak summer months. From the most splendid salons to the everyday workspaces, every corner received meticulous craftsmanship. Door handles were bespoke in bronze. The electrical toggles, still a novel invention, were placed thoughtfully for ease. The warmth system ensured steady coziness everywhere. No element escaped oversight. Upon the breakers' debut summer in 1895, Newport's upper crust clamored for invites. All craved a glimpse of Cornelius's vision. The guided walkthroughs turned iconic. Alice herself would escort key visitors via chosen areas, detailing the artwork, the design, the ties to European heritage. It doubled as learning wrapped in elite showcasing. Detractors might label the Vanderbilts nouveau riche freely, yet none could dispute the breakers as a triumph. Hunt had forged a blend of continental elegance with Yankee grandeur and ingenuity. Each area demonstrated how Vanderbilt wealth, wisely invested, could yield splendor matching the finest old-world offerings. Still, stunning interiors rang hollow, absent the proper societal backdrop. And a 1890s Newport transcended mere seaside getaway. It served as an arena where the nation's richest clans vied for dominance. The breakers became Cornelius's arsenal in this fray. The Gilded Age clash in Newport. Grasp the essence of Newport during the 1890s. Forget breezy seaside delights or fleeing urban swelter. Those were mere pretexts. Newport thrived on rivalry, a genteel conflict waged via palatial homes rather than arms. Perched on a modest isle near Rhode Island's shore, it offered stunning vistas, temperate warm weather days, and easy rail links from New York and Boston. Back in the early 1800s, it functioned as an unassuming vacation spot where prosperous folks leased basic cabins for the season. Charming, serene, without airs. Then, the industrial titans arrived. By the 1880s, Newport had evolved into the nation's premier summer enclave for the privileged. Enclave, however, suggests openness. In truth, it resembled a tight-knit rule by the few. Perhaps 50 lineages dictated entry. If the established inner circle rejected you, your status vanished. Wealth alone held no sway. Business triumphs counted for zilch. Only elite endorsement mattered as true wealth. And the Vanderbilts, for all their vast riches, faced uphill acceptance. The issue stemmed from their forebear, the Commodore. Starting as a ferry operator, he amassed a maritime dynasty via cutthroat tactics. He swore like a deckhand, possessed scant schooling, and scorned polite conventions. Undeniably prosperous, yet coarse. Established New York lineages dismissed him as a self-made merchant. His heirs worked to erase that mark. William Henry Vanderbilt, Cornelius's sire, cultivated refinement. He amassed paintings, supported galleries, acted with decorum. His offspring received fine schooling, polished etiquette, fitting poise. But the shadow of fresh fortunes persisted. Newport's social enforcer was Caroline Astor, Mrs. William Astor, revered merely as Mrs. Astor. Her lineage's wealth derived from pelt commerce and Manhattan properties. Ancient lineage, she insisted, although it spanned just a couple generations beyond the Vanderbilts. But she had cemented her role as the sentinel of New York, and Newport's upper crust revolved around figures like Mrs. Astor. An invitation to her gatherings meant you were part of the inner circle. Being overlooked meant exclusion. The Astors owned their grand estate in Newport called Beechwood, where Mrs. Astor reigned supreme each summer. The renowned 400, those select individuals who could supposedly fill her ballroom and embodied all of New York society's elite, flocked to Newport in summer to join her soirees and adhere to her etiquette standards. The Vanderbilts yearned to validate their place among them. More than that, they aimed to surpass, amassing greater wealth, refinement, and influence. That's the reason Cornelius's sibling, Willie K. Vanderbilt, erected Marble House back in 1892, shelling out $11 million for it. Crafted from pristine white marble to mimic a classical Greek temple, Willie's spouse, Alva, harbored even fiercer aspirations for social dominance than Mrs. Astor. Her goal was to topple the Astor legacy and position the Vanderbilts as Newport's preeminent clan. Upon its unveiling, Marble House stood as Newport's priciest residence, the most opulent, the most striking. Alva hosted galas that rendered Mrs. Astor's affairs seem quaint by comparison. She pulled it off. In just a handful of years, the Vanderbilts had attained a social standing on par with the Astors. Next came the Breakers in 1895. Cornelius hadn't constructed his estate explicitly to rival his brother, though perhaps some underlying rivalry drove it. Regardless, the Breakers swiftly emerged as Newport's pinnacle of prestige. Surpassing Marble House in scale, boasting cutting-edge innovations and featuring a more genuine historical aesthetic, all supported by the core Vanderbilt wealth rather than a secondary heir's share. Rival dynasties hustled to match the pace. The Belmonts enlarged their property. The Berwins raised the elms. Rosecliff rose for the Ulrichs clan. Every estate sought to eclipse the rest, taller, more lavish, costlier. The building frenzy embodied rivalry and extravagant spending. Yet the true rivalry unfolded within those walls, at formal suppers, dances, and daytime receptions. Which hostess orchestrated the finest occasions? Who donned the costliest attire? Whose invitations carried the highest exclusivity? Each gathering underwent scrutiny, evaluation, and ranking. Alice Vanderbilt navigated this arena with finesse. Unlike her bold sister-in-law Alva, she remained reserved, elegant, and impeccable. She organized more modest, personal affairs. Her evening meals gained fame for sumptuous cuisine and refined dialogue. She nurtured ties with creators, composers, thinkers, not merely the affluent. The Breakers earned a reputation as a hub of artistry, beyond mere opulence. Her afternoon teas became icons. She might summon around 20 ladies to the sunlit parlor, pour from porcelain sets valued beyond many homes, and guide discussions like a conductor shaping a symphony. All voices found room, yet Alice steered the subjects, the mood, the rhythm. This marked influence exercised through delicate cups rather than hammers. The summer calendar adhered to rigid routines. Clans arrived toward the end of June, lingered until August's close, and left post-Labor Day. Over those 10 weeks came dances, banquets, outdoor fetes, sailing contests, racket matches, a non-stop whirl of occasions demanding constant readiness, lavish outlays, and intricate alliances. The help toiled relentlessly in peak season, outfitting estate after estate for functions, attending multi-hour feasts, tidying post-midnight dances till 3 a.m., only to resume at dawn. For the elite, it signified relaxation. For the employees, grueling toil. What rendered Newport's rivalry especially ridiculous was its brevity. All this extravagance, just 10 weeks. Those colossal homes, vast retinues of staff, meticulously landscaped grounds, all activated for a mere 2.5 months. The other seasons, properties stood vacant. Personnel got laid off or trimmed to minimal teams. The locale turned serene, nearly abandoned. The Vanderbilts would secure the Breakers come September, head back to their Fifth Avenue residence, and forget Newport until June's return. 70 rooms idle for 42 weeks. The extravagance stunned, but that underscored the essence. Solely those affluent enough for such squandering qualified for Newport. This setup proved unsustainable. Already by the 1890s, advocates decried the indulgence. Publications ran stories exposing Newport estate prices amid urban tenement poverty. Commentators lambasted the disparities. Still, at the time, Newport's elite assumed their dominance eternal. They erred. The Great War ignited the downfall. The economic crash hastened it. Inheritance levies and shifting norms sealed it. In half a century, nearly all those Newport palaces would lie forsaken, auctioned, or repurposed. But in 1895, amid the breaker's vast hall, gazing at the 50-foot vaulted ceiling, no such erosion seemed possible. It appeared timeless, unassailable, the rightful hierarchy. Cornelius had claimed victory. The breakers shone as Newport's gem. The Vanderbilt legacy stood firm. All that remained was savoring it. 8 weeks annually, no more. Even that span would prove fleeting. 8 weeks of glow. For 44 weeks each year, silence enveloped the place. The cycle played out predictably year after year. Around late June, the Vanderbilts would roll in from New York via private rail car, hauling endless trunks stuffed with outfits for all sorts of events, personal belongings, books, and whatever else was essential for their 10-week escape. Staff had gotten there much earlier, airing out the mansion, scrubbing every inch spotless, tending to the gardens and filling the pantries. When the family finally stepped inside, it was all flawless. The season burst forth with energy. That grand hall, dormant for 9 months straight, would ring with chatter, footfalls, bustle, dinner gatherings thrice weekly, tea times in the afternoons, musical soirees at night. Guests poured in, relatives, pals, colleagues, society folks. All 70 rooms sprang to life, serving their intended roles. Alice directed the whole affair. She'd decide bedroom assignments for visitors, select the right dishware for each sitting, pick performers for specific evenings. Coordinating the summer schedule at the Breakers was like overseeing a boutique resort. From 30 to 50 household workers toiled nonstop, whipping up feasts, tidying chambers, upkeep on the estate, attending to company. The mansion turned into an endless whirl of gracious hosting. Cornelius aimed to unwind but never quite shook off his duties. Telegraphs linked the Breakers to New York. Updates flooded in every day. Boardroom calls, rail concerns, ventures needing his input. Mornings found him holed up in his office handling affairs before joining midday meals and later social duties. Body in Newport, mind steering a vast domain. The kids thrived there. Breakers' summers offered pure liberty. Racing across the grass, dipping in the sea, smashing tennis balls, soaking up the waves. They'd summon buddies from nearby Newport clans. Spontaneous bashes, shore jaunts, boat adventures ensued. To them, the Breakers wasn't a display piece. It felt like sanctuary. Over those 8 weeks, the estate hit its stride. Chambers brimmed with occupants, every area activated. Concerts echoed in the music space. The game room hosted non-stop billiards. Afternoon callers crammed the morning lounge. Lavish banquets fed crowds in the dining hall. This justified the $7 million investment, 8 weeks of idyllic warm weather bliss. Come September, it wrapped up. Labor Day signaled departure. Clans headed back to urban estates, resuming everyday routines. The seaside enclave drained away as if unplugged. Newport shifted swiftly from vibrant hub to serene shore village. The Vanderbilts bundled their gear, piling trunks back onto the trains. Help started securing the property, draping furnishings in protective covers, sealing shutters, stowing valuables for safekeeping, emptying pipes against winter chills, readying gardens for slumber. By mid-September, the Breakers stood vacant, hushed, unlit. Just a handful, perhaps 10 souls, stayed on through the year. A superintendent pair, some repair hands, basic crew to ward off decay in the off-season. They'd patrol spaces that lately buzzed with crowds, now hollow and resonant, inspecting for drips, servicing fixtures, guarding against breakdowns or decay. For 44 weeks, the Breakers idled, 70 rooms barren, the vast hall, mute, the opulent music chamber, shrouded in shadow, those ornate areas, the billiards nook, the morning parlor, the sleeping quarters, swathed in cloths, poised for the return of warmth. Consider the financial side, $7 million to construct plus ongoing costs, upkeep fees, wages for permanent help, land levies, power bills, all for 8 weeks of occupancy. That's about 15% efficiency. No enterprise would operate like that, yet this defied profitability. It screamed prestige, and prestige bows to no ledger. The extravagance spilled over past the structure itself. Those structured gardens demanded perpetual care, trimming, sowing, staging for future blooms, regardless of onlookers. Turf required mowing, trails needed sweeping. The Breakers' grounds craved steady vigilance through every stretch, family present or absent. Winters hit the mansion tough. Newport's chills weren't the worst up north, but they bit. Icy spells, nor'easters dumping torrents and gales, briny gusts eating at surfaces. The place braced itself, enduring, anticipating renewal. Keepers waged ongoing skirmishes. Seeps emerged inevitably. Frost could seize lines despite safeguards. Pains called for mending. Minor glitches swelled if ignored. Upkeeping a deserted palace proved tougher, oddly, than one with residents. At least full-time dwellers spotted and resolved snags fast. By April or May, the revival kicked off anew. A squad of attendants would journey from New York, or staff would be recruited from the area. Chambers would be unlocked, ventilated, scrubbed clean, protective coverings stripped away, shutters flung open, and surfaces buffed to a shine. The residence would stir to life, rousing itself from months of slumber. Come June, the breakers would shine once more. Bouquets in all the vases, fresh sheets on the beds, pantry filled, landscapes in full flower, all set for the clan's arrival, followed by 8 more weeks of splendor. This rhythm shaped the breakers for generations. 8 weeks of vitality, 44 weeks of dormancy, repeating endlessly, season after season, a fortress designed for eternity, yet occupied only seasonally. Yet for Cornelius, even that brief span was fleeting. His well-being was crumbling beneath the pressure of overseeing the family enterprise. The migraines intensified. Sleepless nights persisted relentlessly. Physicians urged him to ease up, to truly unwind amid Newport's warm months. He refused or simply couldn't. The vast holdings required unwavering vigilance. In September 1896, scarcely a year following the breakers' debut, Cornelius journeyed back to New York from Newport. He'd savored a decent summer, all things considered. The mansion brimmed with visitors. Affairs ran smoothly enough. He'd even unwound a bit, if only partially. Upon returning to the urban grind to his office, the burdens resurfaced at once. Tasks mounted, issues demanded fixes. The unyielding load of duty persisted. He labored on through September and into October. Usual routine, usual strain. All appeared routine until the day it shattered. The figure who perished prematurely. September 12, 1896. A Tuesday dawn. Cornelius Vanderbilt II sits at his workstation in the Fifth Avenue estate, sifting through letters. At 54, he'd seem in his prime today. But in the 1890s, burdened by years of tension, his frame had aged far beyond. He's scanning a document, train operations, nothing out of the ordinary. Abruptly, his sight clouds. The page before him turns illegible. Characters blur and blend. He attempts to rise, yet his right limb refuses. His right side numbs, weighing him down, inert. He summons aid, but his speech garbles beyond recognition. Stroke, a devastating brain assault. In 1896, absent advanced care or remedies, such an incident spelled doom. Not always instant, often more agonizing. The gradual erosion of self, fragment by fragment, as the shell endures. Healers arrive, they assess, consult, state the obvious verdict. Stroke, grave. Partial healing possible at best, recovery unlikely. Their sole option, ease his discomfort. Cornelius grasps the reality. That's the bitterest twist. His thoughts remain sharp, confined in a form that defies control. Speech eludes him, mobility gone, writing impossible, labor forbidden, stripped of what once fueled his existence, the domain he'd commanded for years. Now another's burden. Alice resolves swiftly. They'll relocate to the breakers. Though off-season and shuttered, she'll revive it. Ocean breezes could aid. Serenity might soothe. Escaping Manhattan's pressures could matter. It likely won't, but attempt she must. Thus, in October, long past the social whirl with Newport deserted, the Vanderbilts head back to the breakers, not for leisure or gatherings, but for treatment and faint optimism. The estate reopens. Help is summoned. Cornelius settles into his quarters, tended by caregivers nonstop. Alice reshapes her days around his needs. No more outings, no luncheons or soirees, just witnessing the partner of 3 decades diminish gradually. Cornelius experiences flashes of clarity, instants where he comprehends speech, conveys ideas via signals rather than talk. Yet such episodes dwindle. The damage runs too deep. His form persists mechanically, heart pumps on, breath flows steady, but his essence ebbs away. Caregivers roll him about the premises. At times, they guide his chair through chambers he envisioned, by treasures he amassed, across realms he fussed over endlessly. The soaring atrium with its 50-foot vault, the salon adorned in platinum. Such grandeur, such meticulous design, such fortunes poured in, and now it scarcely penetrates his awareness. The paradox overwhelms. He'd erected the breakers for timeless legacy, the clan's bold declaration. He envisioned relishing it through the years, warm seasons with offspring, later kin, aging amid elegance. He claimed just one summer, a lone cycle of delight in his masterpiece before fate struck. Time drags on, no progress emerges, healers confirm it, irreversible, no return to duties, no independent steps, no fluent discourse. This existence endures, for an unknown span. With stroke survivors, longevity defies forecast, weeks, perhaps years. Alice projects resolve in public, yet behind closed doors, readies for solitude, overseeing ledgers, guiding the heirs, assuming Cornelius's former roles. She has no ice. Somebody needs to manage affairs and her spouse is unable to. The kids drop by whenever possible, yet witnessing their dad in such a state hurts deeply. The once powerful figure who erected a vast fortune, who earned admiration in corporate meetings, who constructed this stunning residence, now reduced to a quiet figure in a wheelchair. They're grieving his loss even as he breathes. Time marches on. 2 years slip away. 2 years where Cornelius merely persists without truly thriving. 2 years of Alice observing her partner's gradual deterioration. 2 years transforming the grand estate into more of a medical facility than a welcoming abode. It's September 1899. 3 years post-stroke, 4 years since the mansion's debut, Cornelius's health takes a sharp downturn. His heart, strained from decades of pressure and 3 years of inactivity, begins to give out. Physicians are powerless to help. Remember, it's 1899. No advanced procedures, no remedies exist. All they can do is observe and anticipate. On September 12, 1899, precisely 3 years after the incident, Cornelius Vanderbilt II passes away at age 56. The service occurs in New York at St. Bartholomew's Church. The elite gather in droves, the Astors, fellow Vanderbilts, industry peers, all those who vied against, respected, or resented Cornelius in his lifetime. Media outlets report it at length. A Vanderbilt's demise makes headlines, yet the true narrative unfolds in Alice's new reality. At 50, she's a bereaved mother with dependents still under her roof, and she's taken on the breakers. Beyond the structure itself, it's the duty of upkeep, utilization, and validating its purpose. Cornelius envisioned it as an enduring monument, but he also supplied the endless funds to sustain it. Alice possesses wealth, no doubt. Vanderbilt widows never face want. Still, preserving the breakers demands relentless expenditure, wages for household staff, upkeep, levies, services, fixes. The estate devours cash just as intended, relentlessly, lavishly, perpetually. She might offload it. That'd be the sensible path. Cash in, acquire a modest property, enjoy ease without the weight. Countless widows opt for that. But Alice stands firm against it. The breakers embodies her husband's ambition, his bold declaration to society. Parting with it would seem like disloyalty, conceding that his aspiration was unfeasible, that his heritage couldn't endure beyond him. Thus, she commits to a choice shaping the ensuing 35 years. She'll retain the breakers, she'll preserve it, she'll occupy it each summer. Organizing comparable gatherings, upholding identical elegance, she'll demonstrate that Cornelius's creation can persist past his time. This resolve stems equally from devotion and resolve. A path that will challenge her resources, stamina, and resolve. A path that will, in the end, shield the breakers from the doom awaiting numerous other opulent-era estates. Yet initially, endurance is her battle. And for a widow overseeing a 70-room fortress, that struggle proves tougher than foreseen. Alice solitary amid 70 chambers. Summer 1900 marks the inaugural season sans Cornelius. Alice arrives at the breakers, and superficially, all remains unchanged. The help has prepared the place flawlessly. The grounds burst with flowers. The interiors gleam impeccably. Tangibly, nothing's altered. Emotionally, however, it's transformed. She traverses the vast hall, its 50-foot vaulted ceiling that once awed visitors, and encounters mere quiet. No Cornelius poring over work letters in his office, no echo of his strides. The mansion seems hollow, despite the staff's activity nearby. But Alice Vanderbilt isn't one to succumb to sorrow. At 50, hailing from sturdy Cincinnati roots, tempered by heartland sensibility under layers of elite refinement, Cornelius has departed. Existence presses forward. The breakers falls to her now, so she launches the property for the summer. More modest events than before. Mourning period calls for subdued affairs over lavish bashes. Still, she arranges afternoon teas, cozy suppers, private recitals. She upholds the schedule, ensures the Vanderbilt legacy shines in Newport circles. This aligns with what Cornelius desired. Invoices pile up steadily. Staff pay, repair bills, landscaping outlays, operational fees, expenditures she underestimated while Cornelius managed the books. She draws from an ample inheritance. He secured her future handsomely. Yet, sustaining the breakers drains funds at an astonishing pace. She introduces minor thrift measures, subtle shifts, undetectable to visitors or peers. She trims the workforce a bit, opts for less costly blooms from abroad, acquires fewer fresh decor items, tiny tweaks yielding thousands in yearly savings. Her offspring offer both aid and complication. The elders have settled, wedded, independent. Younger ones linger, needing schooling, guidance, entry into society, and they all anticipate annual stays at the breakers. It's their boyhood haven, their tie to Dad. Denying them that would be unthinkable. Seasons unfold. 1900, 1905, 19. Alice upholds the established rhythm. Each June, she unlocks the estate. Throughout the summer months, she organizes gatherings. Come September, she secures it once more and heads back to New York. The tradition set by Cornelius endures as Alice steadfastly resists any interruption. Yet, Newport is evolving. The unchallenged dominance of the long-standing clans is fading away. Fresh wealth continues to pour in. Lineages hailing from the Midwest, from California, from sectors that were unimaginable during the Vanderbilt's initial constructions in Newport. The societal framework is relaxing. The strict protocols are yielding. Alice adjusts accordingly. Unlike the inflexible Mrs. Astor, she isn't unyielding. She embraces emerging households provided they exhibit refinement and decorum. The Breakers holds its prominence within Newport's elite circles, not through any insistence on exclusivity from Alice, but owing to the authentic esteem she commands. Her years of impeccable conduct, her graceful tenure as a widow, her unwavering adherence to protocols, all these secure her a stature that no amount of riches alone could secure. Expenses are climbing relentlessly. All aspects grow costlier. Domestic help seeks greater compensation. Opportunities abound for them elsewhere these days. They might labor in manufacturing plants or administrative roles rather than household duties. Upkeep for a 40-year-old mansion requires perpetual effort. Roofing demands repairs. Infrastructure calls for modernization. Items fail routinely. Land assessments rise alongside Newport's expanding development. Alice begins confronting tougher decisions. She seals sections of the property during the idle periods. There's no sense in warming or tending spaces that sit vacant for 44 weeks. She trims the workforce even more. Evening soirees shrink in scale and occurrence. She's still preserving the breakers, though just scarcely. Acquaintances observe the strain. Fellow Newport households grapple with identical strains. The opulent era is drawing to a close. The Great War demonstrated the crumbling of that inflexible hierarchy. Numerous clans have already offloaded their Newport estates or repurposed them for alternative functions. The signs of decline are unmistakable. These enormous seasonal retreats prove unviable in the long run. Still, Alice declines to part with it. The Breakers represents Cornelius's enduring heritage. It's the site where her offspring matured. It stands as the tangible symbol of the Vanderbilt clan's stature in American elite society. Relinquishing it would signal surrender, conceding that Cornelius's creation couldn't endure beyond one lifetime. Thus, she clings to it season by season, year upon year, as her vitality wanes and her wealth, though considerable, gradually seeps away to feed the property's insatiable upkeep demands. Into the 1920s, now in her 70s, she remains astute and competent, yet weary. The breakers requires unceasing oversight. Repairs crop up endlessly, and choices await her judgment at every turn. She's essentially overseeing a 70-room grand residence single-handedly. Her offspring provide monetary support, yet they pursue their separate paths and priorities. The rising generation fails to grasp her devotion to the breakers. For them, it's merely a dwelling, an extravagant, unfeasible one that devours funds more wisely allocated elsewhere. They inhabit a transformed age. The 1920s pulse with speed, innovation, and city life. Vast Newport villas appear antiquated, echoes of a bygone epoch. Nevertheless, Alice endures. Each summer she unveils the breakers. Each summer she upholds the traditions. Each summer she demonstrates the Vanderbilt name's continued relevance in Newport. It's draining, it's costly, it's likely unwise. Yet it's her solemn pledge. At 75 years old in 1929, she continues her seasonal stay at the breakers, sustaining the estate, waging the gradual struggle against the tides of time and finances. She's preserved it for 30 years following Cornelius's passing. Certainly, she can persist a while more. Then comes October 1929. The stock exchange plummets, rendering survival exponentially more arduous, the downturn that ought to have doomed it. Black Tuesday, October 29, 1929. The market implodes, dragging the nation's affluence into the abyss. Wealth evaporates in an instant. Financial institutions collapse. Enterprises shudder. The very economic foundation that fueled Gilded Age extravagance tumbles. Newport vacates more swiftly than ever prior. Clans entrenched there for ages abruptly find it unaffordable. The grand homes shut down, not merely for the colder months, but indefinitely. Listings emerge on estates once deemed everlasting. The resort enclave that epitomized America's upper crust unravels. The breakers ought to rank among the earliest victims. In the grip of Depression-era America, every facet of it feels archaic. 70 chambers strike as ludicrous amid widespread vagrancy. Legions of attendants become unattainable when households can't sustain even minimal help. Hefty preservation outlays seem indefensible as hunger spreads. Alice, at 75, oversees this opulent domain amid curtailed revenues. The Vanderbilt assets haven't evaporated. By conventional measures, they remain affluent. However, liquidity has suffered grave blows. Portfolio values have tumbled. Yields from diverse assets have fallen sharply. The funds that appeared boundless in 1895 now reveal their limits and continue to contract. She confronts untenable dilemmas. Persist in sustaining the breakers at its pre-Depression caliber. Such a path would deplete reserves essential for broader familial needs, scale back care to essentials only. That would entail allowing the mansion began to show signs of wear, undermining the grand dream Cornelius had once held. After 3 decades of battling to preserve it, she opted to sell. Capitulation. Yet now she pursued a balanced approach, much like she had for the previous 30 years. Drastic reductions in spending, all while safeguarding the home's core essence. The household staff dwindled to the barest essentials, perhaps just 15 individuals, down from the original 50. Entire sections of the estate were shuttered indefinitely. The grounds were streamlined. Gone were the intricate seasonal exhibits. Only fundamental upkeep remained. Gatherings of society all but ceased. Alice, advanced in years and with the era's austerity, could no longer host lavish affairs. The music chamber, formerly alive with grand performances, fell quiet. The billiards area gathered dust untouched by play. The grand dining hall, built for 50 diners, now accommodated simple family suppers for 3 or 4. The breakers shifted from a hub of elegance to a quiet sanctuary. Meanwhile, other Newport clans abandoned their properties outright. One estate after another shut down or changed hands. Some transformed into educational institutions, lodgings, or residential units, anything to produce revenue. Others stood empty, decaying, their futures undecided. The elite summer enclave, once America's pinnacle of exclusivity, turned into a spectral remnant. But Alice persisted, driven no longer by vanity, but by sheer resolve. At 80, She had defended this place for 30 years. She wouldn't yield now. The economic downturn would pass in time. Though the Vanderbilt wealth had shrunk, it remained considerable. She could endure this ordeal. Her offspring expressed concern. They watched their aging, weary mother grasp at a property devouring the family's funds. They proposed softly that perhaps release was due. Part with the breakers before its worth faded, redirect the proceeds to sensible ends. Cornelius had passed 30 years prior. No one would fault them for divesting today. Alice demurred. Each plea drew a courteous yet resolute denial. The breakers remained family holdings. Conversation closed. The upkeep struggles persisted endlessly. Each winter inflicted fresh harm. Every spring uncovered additional issues. Roofs dripped. Fixes proved costly. Paint flaked away. Refreshing the outer facade would demand a vast sum. Infrastructure broke down. The heating, pipes, wiring, all outdated, all demanding ongoing care and funds. Alice coped via sheer tenacity and prudent budgeting. She settled accounts by urgency, essentials to avert disaster first, deferrals for the rest. The residence endured, though just scarcely. It lost its flawless sheen. Edges frayed, surfaces scuffed, betraying its years. Yet it endured upright. The slump dragged onward. 1930, 1931, 1932, 1933. Relief seemed distant. The foundations of U.S. enterprise appeared utterly broken. The framework that had upheld dynasties like the Vanderbilts, the manufacturing empires, rail dominions, crumbled. The belief in enduring riches through lineages unraveled. Still, the breakers held firm. Not flourishing, not immaculate, but persisting. Alice's unyielding spirit sustained it amid fiscal logic, deeming it doomed. This 70-room edifice, requiring thousands each month to sustain, yielding no returns, offering no utility in hardship-stricken America. It persevered because one frail matron wouldn't release it. Come 1934, Alice reached 89. She had surpassed Cornelius by 35 years. She had upheld the breakers across World War I, the exuberant 1920s, and 5 years of slump. She had exhausted every cost-saving measure, staff trimmed to essentials, chambers sealed off, outlays slashed to survival levels, yet monthly demands persisted, levies, services, wages for key personnel, basic repairs. The estate drained resources merely by standing, and Alice had few further trims left. Her vitality waned. Long years of strain from this unceasing war had exacted a price. She spent much time confined to bed. Her intellect stayed keen, but her frame surrendered. Aware her days neared closure, she recognized the breaker's sternest trial would follow her departure. Her daughters Gladys and Gertrude called often. They anticipated the shift. Upon their mother's passing, they would claim the breakers and confront the choice she had evaded for 35 years. Retain it or relinquish. Alice departed on April 22, 1934, at 89. She had guarded the breakers for 35 years amid insurmountable odds. Her efforts ensured its existence, but now she was absent, and the fortress that felled her spouse and defined her existence transferred onward. Gladys and Gertrude gathered in the vast hall, gazing at the soaring 50-foot vault, confronting their life's gravest dilemma. Their mother had forsaken all to defend this domain. But did her devotion justify prolonging the struggle? Or had the moment arrived to acknowledge the obvious truth others grasped, that the breakers, splendid though it be, could not thrive in the contemporary age? Their resolution would shape not only its destiny, but forge a precedent for safeguarding heritage that would rescue scores, among other imperiled grand estates. Yet before that, they must summon the resolve to accomplish what their mother couldn't bring herself to do. Release it. The Daughter's Dilemma. Spring 1934. In the morning room of the breakers, Gladys Sacheny and Gertrude Vanderbilt are seated amid their mother's belongings, confronting an issue with no ideal resolution. The estate now belongs to them. Every one of its 70 rooms, along with the upkeep expenses, the duties, and the weight their mother shouldered for 35 years, has shifted squarely onto their shoulders, and they have no desire for it. This place wasn't the cherished childhood retreat it represented for their elder siblings. They were still children when their father passed away. spending far less time at the breakers and forging their grown-up existences in other locales. Gladys wed a Hungarian nobleman and resides in Europe for much of the year. Gertrude pursues her independent pursuits and passions. Neither envisions dedicating her remaining years to overseeing a Newport palace. However, disposing of it appears out of reach. In 1934, who could possibly purchase the breakers? The economic downturn has ravaged the demand for opulent properties. No one seeks out 70-room chateaus that demand hordes of staff. Even affluent households are scaling back, not growing. The property could languish unsold for years, falling into disrepair as they foot the bills for preservation in hopes of a purchaser who never materializes. They might just forsake it entirely, step aside, and allow the bank or government to seize it over delinquent taxes. Plenty of other Newport clans have taken that route. It's preferable to forfeit the residence rather than drain resources indefinitely on its care. Still, walking away strikes them as a profound disloyalty to their mother's devotion, their father's dream, and the Vanderbilt legacy. The press would revel in the story. Vanderbilt descendants forsake iconic estate. The uproar would be immense. Amid the discussions, a different path emerges. The Preservation Society of Newport County, a modest group committed to safeguarding architectural heritage, could take an interest in the breakers, not for acquisition, which they couldn't finance anyway. Instead, to manage it, welcoming visitors, relying on entrance charges to fund upkeep, ensuring its longevity without the family handling the day-to-day. The notion is bold. Back in 1934, such transformed residences as museums were uncommon. Exposing your private family villa to ticketed sightseers was a last resort, a sign of utter failure after exhausting all alternatives. It meant conceding defeat and upholding your inheritance. It involved permitting outsiders to wander spaces where your forebears resided and perished. It converted personal heritage into a marketable product. But what other choice exists? Persist in their mother's approach. Channel funds ceaselessly into repairs, forfeit all other priorities to sustain the structure. They lack her endurance or fixation, and they perceive the obvious truth others acknowledge. The breakers stands as an artifact, a stunning, significant, historical artifact, yet an artifact all the same. It echoes a bygone era. The core challenge remains. Can it endure onward? Gladys and Gertrude presented their idea to the Preservation Society. The group could rent the breakers for a nominal $1 annually. They would launch guided visits for the public, collect fees, and apply the proceeds toward preservation. The Vanderbilts would hold formal title, but evade operational oversight and expense burdens. This arrangement balances dignity with pragmatism. The Preservation Society shows enthusiasm tempered by wariness. The breakers dazzles, no doubt, but it demands enormous effort. Launching a 70-room estate for public access entails hefty outlays for protections, safeguards, docents, promotion, and success isn't assured. It's 1934, after all. Folks are scraping by for basics. Why would anyone splurge on exploring a tycoon's seasonal retreat? Nevertheless, the society sees the potential here. The breakers gleams as Newport's premier treasure. Success could sustain their operations entirely. Even better, it might rescue fellow threatened Newport estates by demonstrating the viability of self-funding historic homes. Talks drag on for months. Attorneys prepare contracts. Insurers assess hazards. The intricacies abound. Which repairs does each party cover? How are earnings split? What if visitor numbers fall short? Yet motivation runs high on both ends. The Vanderbilt successors aim to protect the site sans financial ruin. The society seeks to solidify its role in heritage conservation. By 1948, 14 years following Alice's passing, the deal concludes with signatures. The Preservation Society of Newport County assumes control of the breakers as a museum. The Vanderbilt kin keep rights to the upper levels, free to summer there if desired. But the lower floor, with its majestic reception areas, opens wide to guests. This isn't capitulation, it's evolution. It accepts that the breakers thrives by embracing a fresh role. Once a seasonal haven for a single clan, it now stands as a tribute to the Gilded Age for all. Initial visitor groups start cautiously. ADM admission fees remain modest, just a couple of bucks. Tour guides shepherd modest crowds via the majestic chambers, recounting tales of the past, the design, and the clan anecdotes. Guests show intrigue, deference, and wonder at the lavishness. They stroll across the vast foyer, pause in the concert chamber featuring its silver-coated surfaces, and envision existence back when the Vanderbilts dominated Newport's elite circle. Initially, crowds trickle in modestly. It's the late 1940s still, amid post-war rebuilding and economic recovery from hardship. Yet the influx suffices to validate the trial, to fund essential upkeep. It demonstrates the approach's viability. The Vanderbilt offspring observe this shift with conflicting emotions, joy that their folks' estate endures, grief over its detachment from family ties, comfort in escaping the burden of perpetual repairs. Such intricacies mark kin heritages invariably. Nevertheless, the plan succeeds. Fellow Newport clans take note. Should the breakers thrive as an exhibit, perhaps additional states might as well. Perhaps viable roots exist beyond neglect or razing. Perhaps safeguarding heritage extends beyond mere structures. It involves reimagining roles for bygone venues. The 1950s usher in booming travel. Greater car ownership, free time, and fascination with the past emerge. The Breakers emerges as a key spot. Travelers schedule trips centered on Newport's grand homes. An initial test evolves into a triumph. Come the 1960s, the Breakers ranks among Newport's top draws. Several other properties adopt the strategy. The Elms, Marble House, Rose Cliff, all welcoming sightseers via the Preservation Society's oversight. Newport evolves from a fading resort enclave into a vibrant archive of the opulent era. Those once faded palaces discover renewed vigor and fresh missions. The Vanderbilt lineage slowly steps back from the Breakers. The upper levels where they held access lie dormant. Even limited occupancy proves unfeasible over time. In 1972, precisely 77 years post its debut, the kin bequeaths the Breakers fully to the Preservation Society. Private control ends. Familial links sever. The estate now serves posterity. It closes the Vanderbilt chapter at the Breakers, yet launches its endurance. For what Gloris and Gertrude grasped, unlike their mother's resistance, is that release can be the sole means to safeguard essentials. Their patriarch constructed the Breakers for eternity. Their matriarch battled to retain it privately, yet their cohort rescued it through surrender. The Breakers in the present stands as a safeguarding triumph. Approach the Breakers now, and you near a 130-year-old edifice from 1895, weathering all the 20th century hurled its way. Dual world conflicts, financial ruin, the downfall of the societal framework that birthed it, eras of shifting U.S. ideals rendering Gilded Age extravagance shameful over splendid. And it shines flawlessly. Not exhibit flawless, with cords and fences rendering it lifeless, vital, flawless. The stone exterior radiates under daylight, pristine, intended. Panes remain unveiled. They're transparent, allowing illumination to pour inside. The estate's environs gleam spotlessly, with flourishing blooms and trimmed turf. Hardly resembling a century-plus-old dwelling, it appears eternal. More than 400,000 folks tour the Breakers yearly. That's surpassing the total guests the Vanderbilt clan entertained across their full tenure. In peak summer months, droves pass through the gateway daily, marveling at the grand foyer, delving into chambers that once buzzed with Newport's poshest gatherings. Guides possess encyclopedic insight. They'll share how Cornelius engineered it, flame-resistant following the prior structure's blaze, how Alice endured a 40-year battle for its sustenance, how the daughters faced the tough choice to cede it to the preservation group, how this residence, above all, showed grand historic homes could persist in contemporary U.S. life. Interiors stay true to their origins. The silver concert space continues to sparkle. The game room's Cipollino stone retains its luster. The foyer dome prompts onlookers to tilt heads in awe. No updates or simplifications applied. This embodies genuine Gilded Age indulgence, archived for public scrutiny, reflection, and comprehension. Crowds adore it. They snap countless images. They daydream of residing amid such splendor, throwing soirees in these halls, commanding 70 chambers plus a staff legion. Certain guests admire it, others recoil at the disparity it evokes. Most simply stand transfixed by the artistry, elegance, and bold vision of erecting such grandeur for merely 8 weeks yearly. The Preservation Society of Newport County ranks as one of the nation's premier heritage guardians, owing much to the breakers. Tour earnings sustain not only this palace's care, but also the safeguarding of further historic sites. The approach pioneered by Gladys and Gertrude, donating a family estate to a preservation group to run as a museum, has been duplicated nationwide from Newport's estates. Yet, upholding the breakers proves enormously costly. Installing a fresh roof runs into millions. Restoring the outer stone facade demands millions more. Modernizing infrastructure without compromising its historical essence also tallies millions. Ticket revenues provide some support, though they fall short every time. The Preservation Society tirelessly raises funds, seeks contributions, and oversees trusts, all aimed at ensuring the breakers endures. Remarkably, it succeeds. Defying every financial rationale, this 70-room extravaganza, crafted for a single family's seasonal retreat, persists 130 years on. It has surpassed the lineage that erected it, the societal framework that sustained it, the financial system that bankrolled it, and all forecasts of its downfall. Consider the breakers alongside Linwood Hall, comparable era, comparable grandeur, equally splendid. Yet Linwood lies in ruins, the breakers gleams immaculate. The difference? The breakers gained a fresh mission. The family released their hold. Preservation triumphed over ego. Or think of the raised Vanderbilt chateaus, the Fifth Avenue grand homes leveled for business ventures, the other Newport summer houses that decayed and vanished. The breakers endured not due to superior construction or greater allure, but because at the pivotal juncture, a wise decision prevailed. Someone grasped that safeguarding the structure outweighed clinging to familial control. These days, the breakers draws more visitors than any Newport residence. It embodies the potential of effective conservation, of how heritage sites can embrace modern roles while honoring their essence, of the importance of safeguarding our history, even if it stirs unease or regret. The twist is exquisite. Cornelius erected the breakers as an exclusive retreat, barring all but Newport's upper crust. Today, it operates as an open museum for any ticket holder. The residence, once flaunting Vanderbilt dominance, now showcases American resourcefulness. Our knack for conserving the past, evolving customs, and opening history to the masses. Stroll its 70 chambers now, and you're traversing far beyond mere architecture. You're amid a wonder, a Gilded Age fortress that ought to have crumbled long ago, yet thrives thanks to resolve, reinvention, and acknowledging the worth of preserving what's vital, however challenging. Richard Morris Hunt conceived it for eternal endurance. He proved correct, though not as he foresaw. The breakers persists not merely for its fire resistance or solid engineering, despite both qualities, but because the public willed it so. Because we cherish our heritage. Because grasping our origins illuminates our path ahead. Cornelius poured $7 million into the breakers and savored just 4 summers there. Alice battled 35 years to protect it, teetering on financial ruin. Gladys and Gertrude relinquished it to secure its future. And 130 years onward, close to 500,000 visitors each year explore the legacy they forged, defended, and rescued. That's true achievement, not the triumph Cornelius anticipated. He sought a dynastic inheritance, a secluded haven for Vanderbilt heirs. But a superior victory, a more inclusive one. A victory declaring that magnificent design serves all, beyond the elite. That history forms collective legacy, not personal possession. The breakers endures as evidence that yesteryears can persist, that splendor lasts, that pivotal decisions can rescue what appeared lost. It's the Gilded Age icon that eclipsed its creators, the tycoons who raised Newport's estates, the elite order that propped them up, the wealth system that nourished them, the kin that possessed it. Amid flames, loss, hardship, and transformation, the breakers prevails, not in spite of its museum status, but precisely through it. That's the key to immortality in America. You share it widely.